It was a warm summer evening in the small town of Maplewood, where the streets were usually filled with the sounds of children playing and neighbors chatting on their porches. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the quaint houses and tree-lined streets. For Marcus Johnson, a 32-year-old black man, it was just another day at work. He had spent the afternoon at the local hardware store, where he worked as a clerk, helping customers find tools and supplies for their home improvement projects. As Marcus finished his shift, he waved goodbye to his coworkers and stepped outside, taking a deep breath of the warm evening air. He had plans to meet his friends at a nearby diner for dinner, a small ritual that brought him joy after a long day. Little did he know that this ordinary evening would soon take a turn that would change his life forever. Just a few blocks away, a robbery had taken place at a local convenience store. The store owner, an elderly white man named Mr. Thompson, had been closing up for the night when two masked individuals burst in, demanding cash and threatening him with a weapon. The robbery was quick, but the trauma it inflicted on Mr. Thompson was profound. He managed to activate the silent alarm before the robbers fled, and within minutes the police arrived. As the officers began their investigation, they took Mr. Thompson's statement. In his shaken state, he described the robbers as young men, one of whom he believed was black. The police, eager to solve the case, quickly began canvassing the neighborhood, looking for anyone who might fit that description. Meanwhile, Marcus was walking home, unaware of the chaos unfolding just a few blocks away. As he strolled down the street, he noticed a police car parked at the corner, its lights flashing. He felt a twinge of unease but brushed it off, thinking nothing of it. However, as he approached the intersection, he was suddenly surrounded by officers who had just received a description of the suspects. "Hey you! Stop right there!" one of the officers shouted, his voice authoritative and commanding. Marcus froze, confusion washing over him. "What's going on?" he asked, raising his hands in a gesture of compliance. The officers wasted no time. They approached Marcus aggressively, their expressions stern and unyielding. "We're investigating a robbery, and you fit the description of one of the suspects," one officer said, his tone laced with suspicion. Marcus felt his heart race as he tried to explain that he had just finished work and was on his way home. "Save it," another officer interrupted, his eyes narrowing. "You're coming with us." Before Marcus could protest, they grabbed his arms and placed him in handcuffs. The world around him blurred as he struggled to comprehend what was happening. He was being treated like a criminal, despite having done nothing wrong. As they drove to the police station, Marcus sat in the back of the squad car, his mind racing. He replayed the events of the evening, trying to make sense of the situation. How could this be happening? He had always been a law-abiding citizen, respected in his community. The weight of the handcuffs felt heavy, a constant reminder of the injustice he was facing. The officers exchanged glances in the front seat, their demeanor suggesting that they had already made up their minds about Marcus's guilt. He could hear snippets of their conversation, filled with racial stereotypes and assumptions that cut deep. "Another one of them thinks he can get away with it," one officer said, his voice dripping with disdain. Marcus felt a surge of anger and frustration, knowing that they were judging him solely based on the color of his skin. As the squad car pulled into the police station, Marcus braced himself for what lay ahead. He was about to enter a world where his innocence would be overshadowed by the prejudices of those in power. The psychological toll of racial profiling was about to unfold, and Marcus would soon find himself fighting not just for his freedom, but for his dignity and humanity. Little did he know that this was only the beginning of a long and arduous journey toward justice. Marcus was led into a small, dimly lit interrogation room, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The starkness of the room was overwhelming, with its bare walls and a single metal table at the center. He was seated roughly, the handcuffs biting into his wrists as the officers removed them only to chain him to the table with a heavy metal cuff. The door slammed shut behind him, echoing in the silence that followed. Moments later, two detectives entered, their expressions unreadable. Detective Harris, a tall man with a hardened face, took the lead. He leaned against the table, his arms crossed, while Detective Ramirez, a younger officer with a more approachable demeanor, stood beside him. "Marcus Johnson, right?" Harris began, his voice low and intimidating. "We have some questions for you about the robbery at Thompson's convenience store." Marcus swallowed hard, trying to maintain his composure. "I didn't do anything wrong. I was just walking home from work," he replied. His voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside him. Harris leaned in closer, his eyes narrowing. "You expect us to believe that? You fit the description of one of the suspects. An elderly man was threatened, and you just happened to be in the area." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Ramirez, sensing the tension, attempted a softer approach. "Look, Marcus, we just want to get to the bottom of this. If you cooperate, it'll go easier for you." But the words felt hollow, and Marcus could see the skepticism in their eyes. "Cooperate? I'm innocent," he exclaimed, frustration spilling over. "I was at work. You can check the store's security footage." The tactics of intimidation. Harris slammed his hand on the table, causing Marcus to flinch. "You think we have time to check every alibi? You're wasting our time, and it's not going to look good for you." The intimidation tactics were clear, and Marcus felt the walls closing in. The detectives began to throw questions at him, rapid fire, each one more accusatory than the last. They twisted his words, misinterpreting his responses to fit their narrative. "So you admit you were near the store? What were you doing there?" Harris pressed, his voice dripping with disdain. "I was just walking home. I didn't even know there was a robbery," Marcus shouted, desperation creeping into his tone. As the interrogation continued, the detectives began to weave in racial stereotypes, their language laced with bias. "You know how it is, Marcus. Young black men in this town always getting into trouble. You're just another statistic," Harris sneered, his words cutting deep. Marcus felt a wave of anger wash over him. "That's not fair. You can't just assume I'm guilty because of my skin color," he protested, but his words fell on deaf ears. The detectives were relentless, their preconceived notions overshadowing the truth. Hours passed, and the interrogation wore on. Marcus felt the weight of the world pressing down on him, the psychological toll of being wrongfully accused taking its toll. He was exhausted, both mentally and physically, as the detectives continued their barrage of questions. "Just confess and this will all be over," Ramirez suggested, his tone almost sympathetic. "We can help you if you just tell us what we want to hear." But Marcus knew that confessing to something he didn't do would only lead to more pain and suffering. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the detectives left the room, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. He knew he had to stay strong, to fight against the injustice that was being thrust upon him. As he sat in the cold room, he began to formulate a plan. He would not let them break him. He would reach out to his family and friends, gather evidence, and prove his innocence. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but he was determined to reclaim his life and dignity. As the door creaked open again, Marcus steeled himself for whatever came next. He was ready to face the challenges ahead, knowing that the fight for justice was just beginning. The weight of the accusations might be heavy, but his spirit remained unbroken. Little did he know, the journey would not only test his resolve but also reveal the deep-seated issues of racial injustice that plagued his community. After hours of isolation in the interrogation room, Marcus was finally allowed to make a phone call. His heart raced as he dialed the number of his best friend, Jamal. The phone rang, and when Jamal answered, Marcus could hear the concern in his voice. "Marcus, what's going on? I heard about the robbery. Are you okay?" "Jamal, I need your help. I've been arrested for something I didn't do. They think I robbed Thompson's store," Marcus explained, his voice trembling with emotion. "I need you to come down to the station and help me figure this out." "I'm on my way," Jamal replied, his tone resolute. "Just hang in there, brother. We'll get to the bottom of this." Within the hour, Jamal arrived at the police station. His presence a comforting reminder that Marcus was not alone in this fight. He was joined by Marcus's sister Lisa, who had rushed over after hearing the news. The two of them stood outside the interrogation room, their expressions a mix of worry and determination. "Marcus, we're going to get you out of here," Lisa said, her voice steady. "We'll talk to a lawyer and figure out what to do next." As they spoke, Marcus felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. With the support of his friends and family, he knew he could begin to fight back against the injustice he was facing. After a brief consultation with a public defender, Marcus learned about his rights and the importance of gathering evidence to support his innocence. The lawyer explained that they would need to challenge the police's assumptions and biases, emphasizing the need for a thorough investigation into the robbery. "Your alibi is crucial," the lawyer said. "We need to prove that you were at work during the time of the robbery. We can request the security footage from the hardware store." Marcus nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "I'll reach out to my boss and get the footage." "I know I was there," he replied, determination flooding his voice. As news of Marcus's arrest spread through the community, support began to pour in. Friends, family, and even strangers rallied around him, organizing a petition to demand justice and calling for an end to racial profiling. Social media became a platform for sharing his story, and soon the hashtag Justice for Marcus began trending in their small town. Jamal and Lisa worked tirelessly, reaching out to local activists and community leaders to raise awareness about the systemic issues of racial injustice. They organized a peaceful protest outside the police station, demanding accountability and transparency in the investigation. On the day of the protest, the streets were filled with people holding signs that read, "Innocent until proven guilty," and "End racial profiling." The atmosphere was electric, a powerful display of solidarity and support for Marcus. As he watched from the police station window, tears filled his eyes. He felt the weight of the community's love and determination, and it fueled his resolve to fight for his freedom. As the protest continued outside, Marcus knew that he was not just fighting for himself but for all those who had been wrongfully accused and marginalized. The journey ahead would be challenging, but with the support of his community, he felt empowered to confront the injustices that had plagued his life. Little did he know, the fight for justice would uncover deeper truths about the systemic racism embedded in the very fabric of their society, and he would become a beacon of hope for others facing similar struggles. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Marcus, fueled by the support of his community, worked tirelessly with his lawyer to gather evidence. He reached out to his boss at the hardware store, who promised to provide the security footage that would prove his alibi. The anticipation was palpable. This footage could be the key to his freedom. Finally, the day arrived when Marcus and his lawyer were able to view the security footage. As they sat in the small office, the tension in the air was thick. The video played, and Marcus held his breath, watching the screen intently. There he was, clearly visible, working diligently at the store during the time of the robbery. Relief washed over him as he saw the timestamp confirming his innocence. "This is it, Marcus. This is what we need to show the court," his lawyer exclaimed, a smile breaking through the tension. "We can file a motion to dismiss the charges based on this evidence." With the footage in hand, Marcus felt a renewed sense of hope. The day of the hearing arrived, and he stood in the courtroom, his heart racing. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation as the judge entered. Marcus's family and friends filled the gallery, their presence a source of strength. As the hearing commenced, his lawyer presented the security footage, explaining how it contradicted the police's narrative. The prosecutor, however, was relentless, attempting to discredit the evidence and paint Marcus as a suspect despite the clear proof of his innocence. "Your Honor, this footage does not exonerate the defendant," the prosecutor argued, his voice dripping with skepticism. It merely shows he was at work. It does not prove he wasn't involved in the robbery. Marcus felt a wave of frustration wash over him. How could they twist the truth so easily? But he knew he had to stay strong. The truth was on his side. Outside the courthouse, supporters gathered, holding signs and chanting for justice. The protest had grown larger, drawing attention from local media. News crews reported on the case, highlighting the issues of racial profiling and wrongful accusations. Marcus's story resonated with many, sparking conversations about systemic racism in their community. As the hearing continued, Marcus's family and friends remained steadfast, their unwavering support a reminder that he was not alone in this fight. Lisa and Jamal exchanged determined glances, knowing that the outcome of this hearing could change everything. After what felt like an eternity, the judge finally delivered his ruling. Based on the evidence presented, I find that the charges against Marcus Johnson are dismissed. He is free to go. A wave of relief washed over Marcus as he heard those words. Tears streamed down his face as he embraced his family, the weight of the world lifting from his shoulders. He was free, but the battle was far from over. As Marcus stepped out of the courthouse, the cheers of his supporters filled the air. He felt a mix of joy and anger. Joy for his freedom, but anger for the countless others who had faced similar injustices. He knew that his fight was not just for himself but for all those who had been wrongfully accused. In the days that followed, Marcus became an advocate for change, sharing his story and raising awareness about the issues of racial profiling and wrongful convictions. He spoke at community events, urging others to stand up against injustice and to support those who had been silenced. Marcus's journey had transformed him from a victim of circumstance into a voice for the voiceless. He realized that while he had won his battle, the war against systemic racism and injustice was ongoing. With the support of his community, he was determined to continue the fight, ensuring that no one else would have to endure the pain he had faced. The road ahead would be challenging, but Marcus was ready to lead the charge for justice, one step at a time.